Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of disbelieving, ours is no yet again of despair. Come, yet again, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan ever is leaving, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan ever is leaving, ours is no caravan ever is leaving, ours is no caravan of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come.
Good morning. Well, I'm ringing the chime for those who have gone before us in the past. I ring a second time for those right now in the future. And I ring a third time for all of those who come after us in the future. I said future before, and I'm a little crispy this morning, so excuse me. Anyway, welcome to the Umpqua Unitarian Universalist congregation. I'm so glad I remember that. Anyway, I'm Glennis Peterson. I want to thank our greeters, Al and Mary Herring. I would like you to please check the insert in your order of service. There are some announcements that are relevant and you might want to get into. And I want to gently remind you to turn off your phone if you haven't already. To help those in our community who suffer from food insecurity, we join with several Roseburg churches in support of the fish pantry. We really need it now. There's a lot of people who have been not getting their food stamps this month, so it's going to be a long line for those that need to get food for them and their family. So we will now collect your food or money donations for fish. On behalf of those who are suffering from food insecurity, I thank you for your generosity. Come into the circle of love and justice. Come into the community of mercy, holiness, and health. Now please rise in body and spirit and join us in singing number 131, Love Will Guide Us.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us, will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us,
fine voice this morning. Now is the time in our service when we remember our joys and concerns with silent or spoken candle lighting regarding the significant milestones in your life. I invite those who wish to light a candle, silent or spoken, please form a line to my right. And for those with spoken candles, please give your name and try to be brief. The offering that we take each Sunday isn't just a stale habit. It's an opportunity to reconnect to this place and to these people. Our offering is an affirmative yes. When we give, we say yes to something we value. With our gifts freely given, may we say yes to the values of our faith. Using these gifts to make a difference in our beloved community and in our world. We are truly grateful for these gifts and are committed to using these gifts to make a difference in our beloved community and our world. And we sing number 402, From You I Receive.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
And now, if you will, sit back and relax. Let the chair support you as you release all tension in your body, muscle by muscle. Take a deep cleansing breath. Slowly exhale. Breathe in again as you breathe in peace. Exhale, releasing all tension, and send out love. Remember that our troubled world needs our love. And remember, if it is language that makes us human, one half of language is to listen. Silence can exist without speech, but speech cannot live without silence. Listen to the speech of others. Listen even more to their silence. To pray is to listen to the revelations of nature, to the meaning of events. To listen to music is to listen also to silence, and to find the stillness deepened and enriched. Slowly return back to the room and try to keep these words in mind. And now please sit back and relax and enjoy our anthem this morning. Make channels for the stream of love. Today, our speaker is Reverend Stephen Landale. Reverend Landale has served as a hospice chaplain since 2012, I think. He served as a full-time UUCE church minister for 11 years. He is here with his wife, Heather, and between them, they have 4 children and 2 grandchildren. Stephen? Let me get my stuff out of the way.
Pleasure to be with you all again. I love it when I can step into the pulpit and feel like, well, at least what I come to church for, many people have received already. So thank you, Glennis, especially for that meditation, reminding us that, well, silence is golden. As my mother used to say, you have 2 ears, 1 mouth. But without silence, we really wouldn't have music. We wouldn't have anything, so it's good to inhabit that. And also, as that last hymn played, I had to sing along a little bit. I was a member of the First Unitarian Church of Oakland when we recorded the first of the CDs from the hymnal. That was the 3rd. And I realized listening to that and thinking about it gave me such a sense of connection with the past, my past, but also a sense of the continuity of tradition, Unitarian Universalism. People put the hymnal together. I was a minister friends with Mark Bellatini, who headed that committee, singing what a joy it was and a lot of hard work to prepare that CD, and knowing that it continued after I left the church. So I served congregations in New England as an intern minister, and then an interim in Connecticut, and 6 years in Rhode Island before I served 3 years in Eugene. So, questions. I put out a little bit of what I'd share in the front of the order of service. As a hospice chaplain, I guess I've learned more deeply what I knew before and tried to practice, and that is the art of the question. I found sometimes these questions are skipped over when people are considering a major decision, medical decision, whether to go on hospice or not, for instance. So I'll stick with that example. So questions I ask when I meet people, sometimes when it seems right. How do you see your situation? I invite you to think about these questions for yourself right now. How do you see your situation? In a hospice context, I might ask, how do you see your situation medically? By the way, the answers to these questions are so open. The range of answers I've heard from how do you see your situation goes from the food stinks here to I'm dying, or I'm dying and I'm ready, or I'm dying and I hate it. So it's a wonderful question. Another part in the question, what is the hardest part of what you're going through right now? What is the hardest part? It's helpful to focus in on one thing sometimes. Name it. A lot of power in naming. Another question I almost never hear, what are your hopes? I remember at a CARE conference, we started jumping into, as a hospice patient, his wife, 3 adult children, talking about the specifics of what was going on for him medically, and I actually interrupted a little and said, let's take a step back. And everybody say, what's your hopes for your dad at this time? Hopes, big picture, deeper. What are your fears at this time? What is something you fear right now? You can feel it in your body. And another question it's always in the back of my mind as I assess people spiritually, but I've started asking it occasionally up front. What are your spiritual resources? Spiritual resources, external, community like this, okay? The hymnal, tradition of songs. But they're also internal. Things a parent taught you, for instance, right? Sense of humor is a spiritual resource, one that's really needed, I find. So those are some questions I've found every year to be even more and more valuable. And asking questions, I read recently, is the ultimate form of respect. Asking questions, now asking questions genuinely, not rhetorically, not sarcastically, asking questions from a place of curiosity is perhaps one of the highest forms of respect. It's something to keep in our back pockets. And there's such a tone difference. It like I said, it really depends what intent we're coming from. So here's the difference. Why are they doing this? To, why are they doing this? You hear the difference? Why are you doing this? Shock, outrage, anger, which is fine to feel, but it's very different than why are they doing this? If nothing else, I invite you to be asking the question in that tone with genuine curiosity. Maybe they're not evil idiots. Maybe there's reasons for it that I don't understand, and I get to discover. A little more background information. I've been also influenced by a book my cousin wrote, full disclaimer, called Deal, and it has to do with helping people make decisions and understanding when people make decisions. And a big takeaway from this book, was that people make information, when people make major decisions, professionals often want to help them with information. So if somebody's considering hospice, you explain how it works. And this is helpful. What the requirements are, how Medicaid works, that you can discharge from hospice if you want to. Those are helpful. But according to my cousin, Jeff Belcora, and I found this to be true, what we call information is only one of 5 drivers behind people's decision-making for major things. So, as an example, you can give all the information in the world to someone, but if they grew up with the idea that giving up is for sissies, and hospice feels a lot like giving up, are they going to enroll? No, right? Unless you help them talk about that. All the information in the world. That's called a soulful driver. If somebody believes it's against their religion to do something like hospice, which isn't hastening death, but maybe they believe that, and they believe their identity is very much connected with their religion, they're not likely to do it. And I've seen this one particular. If a person thinks they may be ready, but they feel certain that their spouse or loved one does not support this, this is the most mystifying. Somebody's nodding, agreeing, and then they take the information and don't sign up. It's because their spouse. So I was engaged in a conversation like this where it turned out, actually it was a spouse who said, I don't think my husband's ready to go on hospice. We talked for a while. It turns out she was the one that was not ready. But we had to get there. Okay. Another driver, that's called social, what other people value, is somatic. That's your kind of gut feeling. People vary in this. A lot of people make decisions based on analysis. A lot of people are gut, which can be good or bad. We're seeing some maybe not good effects of coming from your gut on the national political level. So it has to feel right. So the reason I say all this is when we're in that, why are they doing this mode, and maybe I can influence them. It's more than just information. You can provide all the information in the world, but if somebody is coming from his gut place or their sense of identity, it's not going to change. But it doesn't mean that it can't change. It just means it's going to change differently. Listening, again. Asking questions. Being genuinely curious about why a person feels the way they do. And taking it as an opportunity, I'm going to learn something, not just about this person, I'm going to learn something about being human. I might come away from this interaction a little more aware of my own blind spots, right? Okay. So, applying this, why I think this might be helpful to our political situation. First, asking ourselves these questions is important. Without taking a step back to get in touch with our own deepest fears and hopes, maybe a picture of the society we want to live in together, we'll just be focused on stopping bad things from happening immediately. So, for instance, when we talk more about what our fears are more deeply, it kind of goes away from the current policy that we're upset about to something like, I don't want people to feel unsafe. It's like a little more broader and relatable for others, okay? It's about the deepest fear is about safety, security, okay? Not about label, not about this political party, not about this policy. You know, you may not even use the word immigration or something, but my fears have to do with people's safety. And then hope. I'm going to do a little show of hands here. Please, just if you feel comfortable, it'd be great if you answer with your hands. How many of you have spent significant time in the last week, we'll say an hour combined, might be more than that, worrying about what might happen next with our administration, our country? Hour or more combined. Yeah. I think if I said 5 or 10 hours more, a lot of people, 4 hours in the last, since I woke up this morning. Yeah, okay. Now, here's another question. How have you spent an hour or more in the last week asking yourself how you want things to look in 10 years? Daring yourself to imagine. And in that future, we have essentially the same people in the country, right? Haven't changed a whole lot, but have you imagined this? So how many have thought like that for an hour in the last week? A few of you have. Really? Okay, that's wonderful. That is wonderful, actually. How many of us will say, we'll do it this way. How many of you have spent 5 or 10 minutes in the last week thinking like that? Okay, a few more hands, a lot of them, but that's actually good. This is good news. Do more of that. Well, how you want it to look more broadly, that's getting into the hope. And I think of nothing else when we engage with others to be in that place of the future. So in that place in the future, 10 years, you're cheating if you think, well, this counts on certain people dying, leaving the country, have an exorcism performed on them. No, that's not allowed. Because guess what? Then people who oppose views you have are going to be hoping you die, leave the country, or have an exorcism performed on you, or are saved or something like that, right? So we have to find a way to get along. We're going to have to find a way to let go of our demonization of others, go on a cold turkey diet of schadenfreude, taking pleasure in the suffering of others seriously. Like, think with a recent assassination. What makes people more angry than feeling like others are taking pleasure in suffering of somebody they care about? Like, don't even do it privately. It just angers people. It doesn't justify massive oppression if somebody laughs about a situation, but really, like, why would we do that? It's kind of a cheap, it's a hit of a drug, is what it is. It doesn't help. So, I'm going to ask you, after this meditation and maybe the beginning of the sermon now, how, right in this moment, how you might feel about yourself. What's happening in your body right now? Your physical tension, is it lessening or growing? Do you feel a sense like what's happening to your empathy right now as you think about these things? As you sit in silence, relax your body, breathe in peace, breathe out love, visualizing these things. Your sense of curiosity. And I think these questions, I'll repeat some of them, are important, like at every moment. And just to be, I think it was Gandhi who talked about this, like just like be a scientist with your own life. No, I'm thinking this more from Dalai Lama actually. Talked about this a lot. So when, for instance, you sit down the computer or your phone and get on social media, may not be all bad or all the same, but just ask yourself, what's happening to my physical tension right now? As I engage in social media, what's happening to my empathy, my curiosity? If I'm feeling good right now, it's a great question. Is it because I've been cheered on or gained status within a like-minded group? Is my good feeling, my endorphins, from feeling like The people who think like me are giving me a big thumbs up, right? That can be its own kind of addiction. And I think it's as prevalent on the left as on the right. Or is what I'm feeling right now a bit of embarrassment and humility because I've realized that I've been a bit arrogant or not curious. But now I am. And now I'm kind of relieved that those layers of arrogance, feeling good because I'm right, making things simple when I'm right and they're wrong. I just had this experience that just blew all that up for the moment. And I say that feels good too. It's a different kind of good. And I think that's a feeling of goodness, humility, openness. It's having ego stripped. It's raw, it's scary, it can be embarrassing. But it's a good feeling, ultimately. And I think a lot of what we can do is start to let go of the praise addiction and go with that feeling. I'll talk about this more later, but boy, I had that experience in plenty reading one of the greatest American novels written, I think, in the last decades, Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. Superb novel. Her goal was to write the great novel of Appalachia, and it's based on David Copperfield. Oh, as my wife can attest, hard book to read at night. She said she wanted to write a story about the orphans left behind from the opioid crisis. There's a lot of statistics on this. People don't think about that. And, none of the money that, these opioid companies were sued, it didn't go up into Appalachia to help these families, these orphans and everything. But it's just, it does end well, but boy, it's hard to get there. So empathy. Asking ourselves also, when you realize you've been maybe wrong or jumped to a conclusion or said something that was hurtful, what do we do with that in the moment? Do we ignore it and move on? Do we double down and pronounce things louder because we feel embarrassed? Or do we step back and embrace momentary healthy shame and transition into humility and curiosity? Wonderful. I've just been reminded what an arrogant idiot I can be, and now I get to grow, right? So these are questions we can ask ourselves. Now, once we've done this pretty well, and we have to keep doing it, then we might be in a place to ask others questions, a place of curiosity and empathy. We won't get very far if we haven't experienced being kind of stripped down, called short, and realizing that's a good thing. Then when we question others, we can do it with more empathy and less righteousness, and more compassion, and more willingness to step back and just listen. You can kind of sense when somebody's, oh, no, I never thought of that. Our tendency can be then to pounce and make our point because they've conceded a little bit, or just to give them space and let them kind of feel those helpful feelings of being stripped down. I think having in-time person with people from different us is very important. It's increasingly difficult and therefore increasingly important. We're living more and more in a virtual world. People are lonely and lonelier. And whatever interactions we can have with people who think differently, and we don't have to talk about the heavy stuff, first connect with people. It can be in the grocery store, making eye contact. In fact, last time I was here, I read from a book about 20 things you can do to resist authoritarianism. And one of them was make contact, make eye contact, make small talk, connect with people, right? And when we're listening to someone else, what are we listening for? So again, I can listen. What are this person's spiritual resources? How do they get through hard times? Maybe it's their traditional Christian faith or something that's that has saved them in a way in this life. So maybe even though some of it seems foreign to me, I'm going to listen and just try to have some respect that something they engage with that hurt me might have really made all the difference for them or their children, right? So what helps this person? What gives them joy? What are they hoping for? And then what does this person fear? Okay, beyond the labels, like where do they feel a sense of safety being threatened? Okay? Have you ever heard of the platinum rule here? The platinum rule. We know the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Anybody hear of the platinum rule? It's great. Treat others as they want to be treated. You know, some people like to be hugged and some don't, right? Some people we may be a person who's very private. We don't hate it when people ask us anything that sounds personal, so we never do it for others. Or the other way around. We're somebody who's done a lot of therapy and loves to be challenged, and we talk to strangers about what's going on in our lives. Somebody else may not be like that. So it takes time to figure out, where is this person coming from? To engage a platinum rule, how do they want to be treated without judgment? I mean, wouldn't the world be much better if we all did that? What's at stake for them? Nonviolent communication, I've been thinking maybe that's my next sermon here, by Marshall Rosenberg. I really encourage you, if you've studied this or practiced it or done a workshop, refresh yourself. If you haven't, just look up NVC, Nonviolent Communication. Listen to some podcasts, things like this. I think it's just absolutely critical at this time. And nonviolence does not mean just not violent. Nonviolence ultimately means helping us shift away from seeing each other as enemies, as obstacles, or as pawns that we can use, to seeing one another as human beings. Not seeing each other as a victim, as an enemy, as an oppressor even, seeing human beings. Jesus did this a lot in his ministry. Walk the second mile. I preached about that, may again sometime. And it found that language matters a lot for this. I'll talk about this a little more later, but avoiding any, let me go to that a little later, sorry. Asking yourself what's at stake for them, always underneath, is just an important aspect of listening. And asking open-ended questions. And sometimes questions can look technically like statements, guesses, like, if I were in your situation, I'd be feeling worried right now. And ... let them say. If you get it wrong, they'll correct you, right? But just trying to practice the platinum rule by understanding, gently probing and listening, reading the body language, all of that. We all need this, and we need this of our allies too. And I find that when it's equally as important that we need to ask ourselves these questions, maybe people on the other side of a fence, but also people who are marching with us, for instance. So I had a conversation at the No Kings March with somebody, seemed very thoughtful, had a lot of good things to say. And I think he asked me sort of where did I find some hope in it, and I said nonviolence. And he said something to me that actually a good friend of me who knows a lot more about civil rights and nonviolence said, well, how does that get us where we're going now? I get it for the 60s. You know, people practice nonviolence, people saw it on television. They're like, this is awful that people of color are being beaten up by policemen, and they're not fighting back. And then pressure comes on lawmakers and things start to change. And I agree, it's harder to see in a linear way how practicing nonviolence, it doesn't have a similar pathway now because we don't all have the same media. We're not all getting our news from Walter Cronkite. We're getting our news from different sources. You know, people of color may be getting beaten up and other people may never learn about it. It's not as easy, but it struck me as, and one thing I'd say to that are, you know, unintended consequences rule the day and almost everything. And I'll take the unintended consequences of nonviolence against the unintended consequences of anything else in particular violence, even if it has a short end gain. Violence begets violence. Nonviolence begets nonviolence. But it also struck me that why is it that nonviolence is kind of being put to that test and not other things? So, for instance, this gentleman I was speaking with didn't believe in nonviolence, and I said something about and getting to know people who are different from me, and I've done this in hospice work, conservative, liberal, all over, urban, rural, and being changed by them in a way. And I asked him, like, where do you know people who are really different from you? And he said, in my family. And kind of see the shadow come over, okay? So that's why he doesn't want to do this, because he can't imagine anybody in his family changing their views. So I said, well, how do you think things should go? Intelligent person. He said, I just think California, Oregon, and Washington ought to go join Canada for a while and then maybe come back. Kind of funny, but he's questioning nonviolence and saying, how do we get from A to B? Like, if California, Oregon, and Washington were to try to secede, our president would be thrilled. And he would put down martial law like that, and guess what? The majority of the country would support him. See, those coastal elite liberals, they are traitors. They're trying to break away from the country. I mean, right? You know, the South tried to break away in Civil War, and the Union fought a war to keep them in. So why wouldn't we fight a war or just impose martial law? You know, put our own leaders in place? Like, it's just incredible. I mean, like, we go to these weird places with stuff without thinking it through, but then when someone says nonviolence, it's like, well, how does that lead? It didn't work in civil rights, or it worked in the civil rights movement, won't work now. It's just fascinating to me. So I think it can be hard to imagine the most stubborn people in our lives on the other side of an issue changing, and maybe that person won't, maybe most won't. But I have a hard time imagining things being better in 10 or 20 years if people don't start to listen to one another and change somewhat. If we look to just defeat an enemy and impose our beliefs, it kind of creates a lot of resistance. And guess what? That's already been happening. Progressives have been pretty pushy about language, how you say things, when you do say things. There's been surveys in universities, a pretty high percentage of students who will say, I've pretended to be more progressive than I am to get good grades. Because I was in college in 1990, I heard a friend use the phrase politically correct. And I thought, sounds like fascism, politically correct. Aren't we here to learn and debate things, right? But it's become increasingly in certain liberal circles, there's been less debate and more defining what you can and cannot say. A New York Times reporter about 5 years ago lost his job because it was a recording of a conversation he had with students prior years in which he used the N-word. The context was a 14-year-old student, a high school freshman or sophomore, was kicked out of a school by the principal for using that word. And so he asked, well, what happened in this conversation? Well, the girl who was white and Jewish had a friend who was black, and they just thought it would be funny to insult themselves with racist epithets. You know, it's just kind of a game. And I could actually see that being helpful because it takes the power away. I mean, almost all oppressed groups, Pink Triangle, that was put by the Nazis on gays and lesbians, and then you embrace the Pink Triangle. Almost all kind of oppressed groups eventually say, in your face, yeah, I'm going to take that word and I'm going to be proud of it, right? So anyway, the student got expelled, which I think is kind of extreme, and also kids get to make mistakes, right? And because he used it and he talked about it, and he talked about some of the history of the N-word and so forth, but he used the word with students. This is the New York Times. He lost his job because of it. Context didn't matter. Also in that conversation, somebody asked him, is it ever okay to use blackface, right? And he said, depends on the context. And it turns out that he says, well, what if a person of color puts blackface on? And people are like, that never happens. He's like, well, actually, I lived in South Africa for several years. There's a group of people of color, who had thought it'd be fun to do the blackface minstrel thing. These are people of color. So do Americans, let alone white Americans, get to say, that's racist, you can't do that? And they're like, no, you can't tell us how to do things, right? So, these knee-jerk ideas about what we can and can't do, can and can't say, part of the reason we're in the mess we're in right now is people have gotten really sick of it. Part of the reason colleges have become receptive to a very conservative young man going there to preach and dialogue, as I just forgot his name, and who was assassinated thank you, Charlie, because they've been in an environment where they felt like they couldn't disagree on anything. If you said you were against affirmative action, or if you said you were against particular forms of affirmative action, you could be shouted down as racist, emotionally unsafe. So part of what we're experiencing, part of it, is people reacting against being told what to think and being jumped all over and not feeling emotionally safe to express their views. I found this to be the case as a UU minister. I've had someone come to me and say she was uneasy about abortion. Felt unsafe emotionally saying that in the congregation, but she wanted to say it to me. She wants somebody in her church where she could feel safe expressing these doubts. Even if she didn't think it should be illegal, just discomfort with it. Unitarian Universalism, right? Free and responsible search of truth and meaning. We shouldn't always assume. Give another example. There's a minister I followed. I really love a lot what she has to say, but years and years ago, I read a sermon, and she said, as we all know, gender exists on a continuum. There's not two genders, there's many. As we all know. Well, it's a little thing, but I feel there's a lot of as we all know-ness in communities. And kind of what that says is, if this is something you don't know, you're kind of backwards. Maybe you don't belong here. And with that particular thing, as we all know, gender exists on a continuum. That may very well be a wonderful perspective, may be true in a sense it could be, but it's not truth that most people knew, even in liberal Unitarian Universalism 20 years ago. So why say as we all know? And part of it is, this is a major point here, we've given up on dialogue, we've given up on persuasion. So much in our society is about assuming, bullying, saying what you can say and not say. Part of the reason liberals and progressives have struggled so much is because they're so afraid of being jumped on by other liberals and perspectives. For instance, Kamala Harris, in Democratic primary, raised her hand at a debate with others when saying, do you support the decriminalization of border crossings? I have a hard time believing that Kamala Harris, who was Attorney General of California, who ran on a tough as crime, she may say compassion for immigrants. She may say, let's make it more easy to go through the process legally. But to say there should be basically no such thing as illegal immigration. If people come across the border and are not allowed to, there's nothing. Democrats took an extreme view, I feel, in that case. But also, more to the point, people were going along with the flow because they were afraid, not just to get elected, but this happened socially, afraid of being jumped on. And I feel like liberals have been eating other liberals alive rather than saying, how can we broaden the tent and bring in people who agree on issues A, B, and C, but disagree on D, E, and F? Instead of calling them racist or backwards, how about we work together towards common goals? So we are only going to get to where this better future with dialogue, with persuasion, and those things are not possible if we're policing one another's language and ready to jump on one another. And it makes it easier for people on the other side to say, you're being Nazis, you're being fascists, because you're constraining communication. So I went back to nonviolent communication. Marshall Rosenberg makes a big distinction. He basically saying, avoid all labels of any kind. And I've heard people say this in parenting. Praise can be as hurtful as kind of insults, saying you're such a good student can put, or you're so smart. If kids told you're so smart all the time, they then feel there's something wrong with them when they struggle with math or something like that, right? Parents want you to be smart. Maybe the love I receive from them is being conditioned on you're so smart, you're so smart, you're so smart. Labels can be very destructive. And so trying to learn to describe things in a way without labels, more neutral language. So I'm going to give some examples of labels, how liberals talk in a lot of ways. Undocumented alien, pro-choice, white supremacy, anti-racist, oppression, GLBTQ, and then can't even keep up with all the letters that are beyond it now. Like, what's the current right way to say that? Latinx. What gender were you assigned at birth? Gender versus sex. Transgender. Compassion. Masculinity, if it's mentioned in liberal circles, usually has the word toxic before it. Toxic masculinity. Privilege. Nazi. DEI. Authoritarianism. I use that word a lot, etc. So people who agree with, kind of think alike, are comfortable using these words. It's a shortcut for things. On the conservative side, you'll hear phrases like illegal alien instead of undocumented. Undocumented immigrant is what should be on the liberal side. Right to life, Second Amendment rights, God's gun country, men and women, biological men, biological women, transvestite, masculinity, toxic compassion, F your feelings, coastal elites, family, faith, tradition, Nazi, reverse racism. So people are speaking over here in this language, people are speaking over here in that language, and it serves a purpose. The purpose is to define an issue with a certain frame. So if you define abortion as about being pro-life or pro-choice, you've put a frame around that issue as part of your argument. But what you've also done is excluded and maybe pissed off people who feel a little differently about it. So maybe if none of us talked pro-life or pro-choice and all of us talked about abortion, and maybe even eventually who should make the decisions in that case, but just have a conversation about abortion, we have better odds of actually understanding one another and actually persuading people ultimately. So political jargon, one thing I can say that is to recognize all those terms I threw out. Anti-racist is political jargon. It's a useful shorthand for describing something. White supremacy is. But you're not going to convince anybody by using those words who doesn't already think like you, right? It's going to offend people. I'm going to feel like, you're saying I'm racist? So why not use more words? Why not talk about specific situations? Why not have silence? Why not ask and talk about situations? So here's a thought. Talking about fairness and asking people. Here's a question we can ask. Does this seem kind or right to you? That men are arriving on apartment rooftops in helicopters sent by the government. They're masked. They're breaking into people's homes. And they're taking parents away from children. They're dragging people away. Does that seem right to you? Kind. Okay? So what if we talked about it with simple words? Like most people, it's not everybody, but kindness, decency. A wonderful opportunity at this time is that so many people, not all people, but there's the people making decisions for the country on the right have gone so far out. Instead of being super angry, yes, of course we're going to be angry, that does serve a purpose too, but Like people, like we can reclaim the middle. Kindness, decency. Seriously, if you have any Christian leanings, what would Jesus say about that? And listen, let silence sink into somebody else instead of just fury. Forget the fascist language, even if it's true. Forget all that language, even if it's true. Talk about these things in a simple way and ask questions, invite conversations. And you can only get to the point where you might influence somebody if you just start doing small talk, get to know people in person, less time on your phone, okay? And we can only persuade people when we are also persuadable. Maybe your position on abortion or what's happening with crackdown on illegal immigration won't change fundamentally, but maybe you'll wind up with a little bit more understanding of why people feel the way they do a little bit. I'm going to close with one example related to this book. Barbara Kingsolver, it's a wonderful novel, but there are places where explicit issues are discussed in more academic terms. And one of them is that people in Appalachia for a long time have been living under a land-based economy instead of a money-based economy. And that doesn't go over very well with the government because you can't tax people who are trading, homemade liquor for tomatoes. There's no income there. There's nothing to tax. I don't know if you all knew, but, the Whiskey Rebellion. And I kind of love Hamilton from the musical and everything. But Hamilton and George Washington literally rode in on an army to enforce Hamilton's great idea of saying that every exchange of whiskey needs to have a tax on it that comes back to, in that case, New York. And people are up in the hills, they don't have much money. They don't sell it. They trade. And we can't pay taxes on this. Well, the army came in. George Washington, ready to kill mountain people for not paying taxes when they weren't even exchanging money. I mean, just really think of this. This book has been very helpful. And this has happened other times, too. So many things have been forced on people in Appalachia and other places in the country. Mining, they tried to form a union, squashed. Man, the mining owners brought in the government. This also happened with the rails. Pullman. My father worked for Pullman Power Products, and later on I learned, oh my goodness, this National Guard was come in to bust up. People protesting the fact that they lived at a company town. All their money came from the company, went back to the company, because everything was owned by the company, and their wages were cut, and their rent didn't go down. They couldn't survive. So they rebelled, and the government went in. So the reason I say this is when mostly white folk in these places are then kind of told by liberals that they suffer from white supremacy, and really, in most social circles, you can't say the N-word, can't say things like that. But how many of us have made fun of hillbillies, right? How many positive portrayals do you see of mountain folk from Appalachia on television compared with positive portrayals of people of color at this point, right? And I'm saying this, there's a lot of people in this country who are rural and white and feel like they've had the shit kicked out of them by the country and disrespected. Media doesn't respect them. If one of their folks show up on a TV show, it's a joke. It's literally a joke. So it's helpful. Books, if you can't reading, good fiction helps to expand our empathy to understand people. So one more just political thing here. And this is bigger than Trump. Vance, who's really more of a true believer, as many of the people in the administration are, true believer, he has been advocating for a different understanding of what it means to be an American. You look up his speeches to conservative groups, okay? And His thing is, he says, this idea that America is a country of ideals is just liberal brainwashing. And he also says it's impractical. Because if you said that, he makes a straw man argument that's kind of ludicrous, saying, so what you're saying, liberals, is that anybody who says they believe in peace and freedom and all these things could be an American. Well, does that mean we're going to have 2 billion Americans because all these people say they believe those things? No. What makes people an American is living here for a long time. Your ancestors lived here. And his image for this is a cemetery. What makes you an American is they have ancestors in the nearby cemetery. Now, you can look at this and say, well, that kind of adds up to racism. It kind of does. First of all, those white cemeteries don't have former slaves in them. They also don't have the Native Americans who were booted off the ground. So there's lots of racist implications about it. But after reading this book, I kind of get oh my gosh, this politician's respecting me. He gets it. He says I'm a real American because we've been here a long time. I can have empathy for the appeal of that while still fully understanding the dangers of it, right? And the only way I feel like liberals are going to counteract that, again, there's this big space in the middle, is start to talk about what the founders talked about. Wow, they're throwing out the Declaration of Independence. And if that's what country means, then throw out the Constitution too. And pretty sure his way of thinking is just tribalism. That's what it amounts to. And we're no different than every other tribal culture. That's where he's leading us. But we have the opportunity to talk about values and things again, about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to quote founding fathers. And also put this out, but only if we're willing to get past our anger at the fact that so many of those founders owned slaves, which they did. But if all we hear when we hear the words Thomas Jefferson is he was a racist who owned slaves, which he kind of was, and they created something that moved the country and themselves beyond it. I mean, Washington sold the slaves ultimately and things like this. So we can honor what they did. Democrats can be, or liberals can be the folk who stand up for the founders' vision, but only if we're not policing ourselves, and only if we have some genuine curiosity about why people are thinking differently and be sympathetic towards it. Does that make some sense? So engaging with others, listening to where they're coming from, having empathy, and then having a conversation that's an interesting idea about what it means to be an American. Instead of just saying that's racist, saying, but you know what? I think the founders got it right. I think it has to do with this vision of how we can treat one another in democracy. And I think immigrants have made this country great too. I point to somebody in my family. That makes some sense. So that's why, pardon?
What's the name of the book? Show it again.
Yeah, it's Demon Copperhead. Demon Copper. I'll have it out here. So going a little over, I know we have some discussion. Thank you. I'm just going to stop right there because I don't know where to stop apparently. But I think we have some time. Do we still have some time for a little conversation before closing up?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, comments?
Can't really help myself here. My comment is in two parts. As most of you know, I'm in bass player in bands, and almost every one of my bandmates are on the right, staunchly on the right.
Yeah.
And one of the bands, they were making comments about how terrible the left is, and one of them said we should start spraying bullets, and I quietly said that would be murder.
Yeah.
And that's all, and they just kind of backed off, and they
Yeah.
never mentioned that again, in front of me anyway. The other band, our guitar player is very staunchly on the right, and I heard him get into an argument with an ex-band member, but he knows that I'm not on the right. And and I've been his bass player for 5 years now, and the music has transcended all of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
So we have not talked about politics, I know I'll never change his mind or heart, and will just really tick him off, actually, if I tried. But he does recognize it, and at one point, he was giving me a ride because I couldn't drive for a period of time. And he was going to leave the car, and he turned off the radio, saying, "I know you don't want to listen to right-wing media." So there's an awareness there, and we still have managed to transcend all of that. I just love him dearly.
Glennis, that was absolutely wonderful. Thank you. And how good for you for sticking it through and making music, finding something you love despite the difference. And you have made a difference. You're a human being. I mean, to put it in stark terms, if violence were done to you or to someone you love, he'd care. He'd reconsider. Right. And just what a wonderful saying. At heart, that would be murder. 4 words. Who's in favor of murder? No. You bastard, you that's not going to work, right? That would be murder. Pause. Quietly. Let it sink in. And stay in relationship. That was your sermon. I went a long time. That was great. Okay. Yes, thank you. Anybody else?
Right here. On the outside chance you would get an honest answer, do you have a question that you would ask our president?
I think it's a little different with people, followers. There are some people who, frankly, if I had a conversation with our president, this is a little different rules in this case. I would use flattery, and I'd see if I could steer him into a different direction. Maybe it would be appeal to his ego and say, you know, you've been talking about immortality a lot lately and how you can live forever. Have you thought about this? Something. Will that make sense? I think that would be a way. Yeah.
Thanks for your talk today. It really spoke to me.
Thank you.
I was speaking with a friend recently who had gone to the Midwest during the election to try to change minds, and she couldn't understand why they were aiming particularly at the white middle-class homemakers. It was a big shift in that group as to where they would stand, and she couldn't understand why they weren't more liberal. And she did a lot of work and asked a lot of questions, and she came up with the idea or the decision that a lot of them felt that they had children, males, white male children, and they were worried about their future in our society and whether they would get jobs and have the opportunities that they all hope for. And I just think it's so interesting to hear stories like that. It opens my mind to how the other folks are feeling and things I would have never thought of. And now I'm kind of looking for those things. It's like, what is it that makes them feel that way? And immigration is a big issue. And I know that we've, we opened our borders, which I personally feel is a great thing, but some people are separatists and they're isolationists and they don't want these millions of people just flooding into the country, and I think it goes far, it's gone way too far in controlling. But there are those thoughts that we can't just have everybody coming in all the time. Anyway, I'm trying to find the reasons that people feel the way they do.
I mean, one is just to look at the practical implications for some people. If it were
Yes.
totally extreme and totally there, they literally would lose their jobs, or minimum wage would be a really good wage all of a sudden. So there's practical reasons for it. But one thing I think people on the left do not consider at all, completely shocked that so many Latinos supported Trump. I was on the ground in Pennsylvania and decided to go to Hazleton just because that was one place that popped up on a list. I didn't realize Hazleton's become, I think, majority or close to majority Haitian immigrants. And I saw Trump flags in some of the windows and things. And I think something that kind of liberals understand is the sense of unfairness that some legal immigrants feel about people who came illegally. It's like jumping in line.
Yeah.
and made people come illegally. In that case, there really was an increase in crime and drugs. There really are, even if it's exaggerated,
Right.
there is a truth to there are some gangs coming in from places. So we don't do ourselves any favor in pretending it doesn't exist, or there's no crime in Chicago. There is. There's a lot of crime there. But that doesn't justify what happened. So, I mean, you're just not going to get anywhere if you deny someone's reality or don't have any curiosity about it. So it's great to have curiosity. And the gender thing is huge. African-American vote, to what extent that it was, it changed at all, is young men. And I think that a lot of people on the right feel like there are not positive visions of what it means to be a man. And when you blow up the whole notion of gender, it's like, well, we've lost that. And literally, I think, when I hear on a progressive talk radio the word masculinity, it always has the word toxic before it. Like, is it such a bad thing? Then you wonder why men are like, well, I want another vision of what it means to be a man, and people over here are telling me. It's a pretty awful one, but it's like it's the only thing being offered. So anyway, thank you for that. The gender thing is huge right now. And Charlie, I think that was a big part of Charlie Kirk's. Young men in college feeling like they needed something different. He offered something different. Anyway, yeah.
I'd like to touch something on that. As a young white male, I definitely can see that a lot of young people are disenfranchised, that especially white people. They think they've been wronged somehow. Myself, I try to utilize my white privilege, male privilege in helping others and moving forward. Although, Charlie was able to get through to people because he stoked the fire within people, and it's the wrong fire. But thank you for your sermon. It was very interesting, and I've been thinking a lot lately of how I do want the future, and if we do nothing, then it's going to be a pretty scary future. But I feel like if we have all the resources right now, we have the ability. We just need to have the will as a country. And I'm trying to build that. And I think there's other people. I believe that the majority of Americans are Americans, and it seems to the center seems to go one way or the other, and they went more right this last time. But I do believe that there's a pendulum, just as politics has been, and it's really exciting with Zohran Mamdani running, and how many people are excited about him, and so there's hope for the future. I'm excited.
Yeah. But I'll also add on that one, whether that influences things in a country depends on how good he is at governing. And something liberals have forgotten about often is how to make government work effectively. And we're being honest, it's not very efficient. It's not working. Maybe the most idealistic project in the world, but it's not actually working. So I think liberals have to make government deliver, and they'll be believed in. It's happening. Anyway, another longer political conversation. But I hear about your matter. The thing is, people are going to support the person who feels like this person has my back. He understands me. He, in this case, even if it's, shenanigan, I think in Trump's case, but like Vance or something like that. He understands me. He isn't insulting me. He's got my back. So Biden tried to reverse things by doing all these wonderful economic programs. Almost all the programs, including clean energy, disproportionately benefited rural and Republican areas. And I think people on the left think, well, hey, we're going to deliver for you. You're going to support us, right? But you're delivering for us, but we still feel insulted. So no. dignity and respect, and it turned out to be the most important thing. The benefit of the doubt, you know. Anybody else, or should we wrap up from there and sing? Let's wrap up. Okay, it's long. Thank you for your patience. I talked about listening. I talked a long time. Okay, all right. So, shall we sing?
Please rise as you are able and sing number 108, My Life Flows On, an Endless Song.
I'm going to start off singing it, invite you to join. I've sung this a cappella a lot of times. I'm not 100% certain it's the same key as in here. So please stand and join with me about halfway through the first verse if you like. My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars? I know the truth, it liveth. What though the darkness round me close? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing? May we go forth from this place, breathing in love, listening, and breathing out peace and love. Amen. And we sing.
And we will form our circle and sing Go Lift It Up.
Moonlight star.